You're listening to Stealing from Wizards, Volume 3, Kidnapping, by R.A. Consul.
Chapter 28. Order Up. Kuro lifted the plate of fresh pancakes onto the counter separating the kitchen from the rest of the diner and rang the bell to let Wanda know the food was ready. He grabbed the next order from the pile and retreated to his grill to scramble some eggs. It wasn't a bad job. He'd fallen into it mostly by chance and the good nature of Wanda and Tom. Kuro had left everything behind and run to the Blandlands. He was determined to find a way to survive that wasn't just theft and begging. But he was too young to work for most places and didn't have any Blandlands identification. So he had wandered. He snuck into trains, hitchhiked, scrounged bus tickets, and when those failed, he walked. One of those wanderings had landed him at a truck stop a little to the left of nowhere. It was miles from any town, just a diner, gas bar, and motel meant for travelers too tired or hungry to wait the hours it would take to reach something better. It didn't even have a name. The sign outside just said, Diner. It didn't need one. There wasn't another restaurant between it and either horizon that someone might confuse it with. He'd shown up with enough scavenged cash to choose between one sausage or 2 slices of toast. Watching him wrestle with that decision, the lady behind the counter had taken pity on him. "It's kind of busy today, and the kitchen is having trouble keeping up," she had said. "If you do a couple rounds of dishes, you can eat your fill. How does that sound?" She didn't have the look of a compassionate woman. Steel gray hair and a permanent scowl advertised her as being someone with no time for nonsense and little patience for much else besides. It was a persona cultivated by having to deal with grouchy drivers day after day. The kitchen consisted of one very large grill and one very busy man. Tom had the sort of kind and friendly demeanor granted to those nobody would dare offend. He was big in every sense and had so many tattoos that he was more ink than flesh. He had responded to the arrival of a young vagrant with joyous relief. When the driver Kuro had been hitching with left without him, Tom and Wanda traded him a room at the motel for help with the dinner rush. By the end of his second day, he was helping Tom with the eggs. By the end of his first week, he'd completely taken over the breakfast menu. After a month, it had started to feel like home. He enjoyed that he was earning his keep. His employment might have started off as an act of charity, but he'd grown into the job, and they valued his work, even respected it. Being able to get a consistent golden brown pancake or flip an egg without breaking the yolk wasn't wizardry, but it was appreciated by folk who hadn't eaten anything that didn't come from a plastic wrapper for a couple of days. Living out of a motel room at the side of a highway wasn't luxurious, but even so, there were things to appreciate. The forest behind the diner stretched off into infinity, and after an hour of walking, all sounds and signs of humanity faded until it felt like he was walking through untouched wilderness. Spring sprung gently in the Blandlands. Unlike in the fairy realm where every blossom announced its arrival with blinding color and eye-watering aroma, these flowers went about their business quietly. They emerged tentatively, their muted colors and gentle scents almost asking permission to be noticed. Spring also brought a family of bears to the diner. Kuro spent many of his dawns sitting on the motel roof watching the mother teach her adorable new cub how to pry open garbage cans. There was something nostalgic about watching the cub's clumsy efforts, and Kuro wished he'd had someone as experienced and caring as the mother bear to teach him the ways of dumpster diving. It wasn't a forever home, he knew that, but it was a safe place to stay while he figured out how to live in the Blandlands. Nearly safe anyway. "Hey kid," Wanda shouted over the counter during a slow morning. "Some weird tourist is asking for waffled eggs and french fried beets. You think you can fake something for him?" People asking for things not on the menu wasn't that strange, so he had 3 eggs ready for the waffle press before he realized how odd the order was. It was lodge food. It was a totally ordinary breakfast from the Luton on Avalon, who enjoyed misunderstanding wizard food, but it was not something Blandlanders ordered. Suspicions raised, Kuro peeked around the corner to the dining room. In a booth by a window, sipping casually on a coffee and wearing an ugly red sweater with the word Canada printed across it, was Knight Commander of the Canine Unit of the Royal Guard, Sir Talon Dubois. "He looks like a cop," observed Tom, peeking around the same corner. "He is," said Kuro. "Want me to get rid of him for you?" Tom offered. "It's fine," said Kuro. "I know him. If he was going to arrest me, he wouldn't have ordered breakfast. Can you handle the grill if I go talk to him?" Dubois waited patiently for his breakfast while pretending to be interested in Blandland tourism brochures. "How did you find me?" asked Kuro, sliding a plate of eggs and beets onto the table and sitting across from Dubois in his booth. "Blind chance," said the Hound, sampling his breakfast. "Remember Evan, that kid you rescued last summer? Someone was going to check up on him and blew a tire, swerving to avoid a fox just up the road. She stayed the night at the motel here waiting for repairs. She saw you and reported back to me." "How is he?" asked Kuro. "Fine," said Dubois. "His parents are being a little overprotective, but that's to be expected after he went missing. No signs that he's a wizard yet, but he's young. It's a good thing, too. If he started levitating his toys at this age, it could cause problems." Kuro nodded. He was happy to know the kid was safe, although the news was tainted by the fact that he no longer was. "What do you want?" he asked. "Just to talk," said the Hound. Then, responding to Kuro's look of incredulity, added, "Seriously, I'm not going to make you do anything you don't want to do." "Go ahead, then," said Kuro, nabbing one of the French fried beets from Dubois' plate. "First things first, are you okay?" Kuro shrugged in a generally affirmative way and continued chewing. "Your friends will be happy to hear it," said Dubois. "Everyone has been worried sick about you. They don't understand why you ran away after the events at the palace." "But you do, don't you?" Kuro accused the Hound. "Why don't you tell them?" Dubois raised his hands defensively. "I don't know anything. There is a lot that is very unclear about that day. My suspicion, though, is that you think that some of the things you did might be considered criminal." Kuro neither confirmed nor denied that suggestion, so Dubois continued. "I have something that might help in that regard." He pulled a rolled piece of parchment from his bag and handed it across the table. "It's a royal pardon," he explained, "from the Queen of Tirnanog." Kuro cracked the wax seal and unrolled it. "Is this real?" "Would I lie to you?" A dead-eyed stare from Kuro made him change his response. "I have nothing to gain from lying to you about this," he said. "It does, however, benefit me, since you don't have to hide crimes you've already been pardoned for. Her Royal Highness, thought of it. Apparently, she was meant to be handing them out to a whole swath of Roche's old associates like Phineas Hearn." "So this is just an interrogation." Dubois showed no interest in eating the breakfast that had been cooked for him, so Kuro decided to take the whole thing rather than see it wasted. "Not just an interrogation," said Dubois. "But yes, I have some questions. First and foremost, how did you figure out the warden was Claudius Roche?" Kuro had spent time reflecting on that. How he had discovered something skilled wizard hunters had failed to find for decades. "I think he wanted me to," he said. "He wasn't really hiding it, and he seemed happy when I worked it out. Since he made me, I think he wants me to be a success. If I'm a useless failure, that means he failed too. Also, I wasn't supposed to remember. He was just gonna gloat about how clever he was and then carve the memories out of my head." Dubois liked that answer, likely because it made him seem less incompetent for not finding Roche himself. "How did you work out that Roche was making copies of his mind with those circlets? Nobody even imagined that was possible until you pulled it off the regent's head." Kuro double-checked the pardon. "All crimes known and unknown committed before time of signing," it read. Marie's signature was at the bottom. He readied himself for the consequences of his admission nonetheless. "I gave it to him," he said. "Phineas told me to swap a forgery for the real one. I thought he wanted the original for something. I guess the forgery was the important part. Is the real regent okay? Is he angry?" "He's pretty upset," said Dubois. "I won't lie, but he's fine. He says it was like having a strange dream that he couldn't wake up from. He's grateful for you saving him, though, and maybe doesn't need to know the specifics about how the circlet came to be on his head. If nothing else, it would be an embarrassment to the Knights of the Sun that a mere child was able to gain access to the Regent. Best not to kick that hornet's nest. It's been a trying time for the Knights already. Kuro found it suspicious that the head of the Hounds would sweep something like that under the rug so easily. Then again, Dubois seemed to like keeping information to himself whenever it might gain him an advantage in the future. Instead of explaining further, the Hound moved on to other things. Do you know why he wanted to start a war? When Kuro gave a confused look, he continued. Marie was given a speech for her coronation. It included giving the Western Wildlands to the Fireflies, thereby creating a new kingdom. But that would start a war with all the fairies and giants and other folk who already live there. We can't figure out what he'd gain from that. Kuro tried to recall if Roche, as either the Warden or the Regent, had expressed any interest in war. Maybe the one Roche just wanted to annoy the other by having people fighting in his territory, Kuro guessed. Dubois had trouble swallowing that idea. You think he would start a war to annoy himself? Yes, said Kuro. He doesn't care if other people die. He talked like he was playing some great game and his opponents were other copies of him. It was like the only person he thought was worthy to play against was himself. It's hard to believe he'd throw the continent into chaos just to score points in an imaginary game. Then maybe it's a misdirection. Kuro picked up a fork from the table and then, with a flourish, transformed it into a spoon. Impressive, said Dubois, but I can see the fork in your sleeve. But did you notice me stealing your bag with my foot? He replied, reaching beneath the table to produce the Hound's satchel. Dubois snarled but accepted the purpose of the performance. What could he need a distraction of that size for? Dragons, said Kuro. He only stole 2 things from the vault, the royal armor and a book on dragon taming. We didn't find any books. I took it with me by accident. I threw it away. I hope you didn't want it. Want it? Said Dubois. I probably shouldn't know it exists. The books in that vault are all royal secrets. Did you read it? Would that be bad? Only if anyone ever found out. Kuro responded by paying a lot of attention to the plate in front of him. As that topic had slammed into a dead end, Dubois changed direction. Did you deliver any other counterfeit circlets? No, the Regent's was the only thing like that. Maybe I should have known it was special because Phineas stopped ordering me to go to the palace after that. Just out of curiosity, said Dubois, perhaps trying to downplay the seriousness of the coming question. Did you break into any other palaces? No, just the one in Camelot. That answered the question asked, but perhaps not the one intended. It was technically true. He had not been in any other palaces. A couple castles, manors, and mead halls, but no palaces. I don't suppose you know how many other Roches there might be. Kuro thought for a minute. Besides the Warden and the Regent, at least one. How do you figure? There were 2 chess games being played in each of their offices, said Kuro. So at least one left to catch. Only one? Confirmed Kuro. Does that mean you got the Warden, Roche? Dubois gave a wolfish grin. I got a very strange report from Sephet Niflheim while we were out searching for you. I got there in time to catch the Warden picking up his treasures and burning his little phrase into the office floor. Is the real Warden okay? Asked Kuro. The doctors say he'll make a full recovery, Dubois said casually. Noting the judgment in Kuro's eyes, he added in his defense, I didn't have a bucket of salt handy, and my Roche didn't trigger any security wards during our fight. Something that had been troubling Kuro surfaced. What happened to Roche when I took off that circlet? He asked. Did he die? Did I kill somebody? I don't think so, said Dubois, who seemed similarly troubled by the question. Those circlets were enchanted objects, not people. They were just copies of Claudius Roche's thoughts and memories, piggybacking on their hosts' minds. You freed Albinactus from a parasite. I still don't feel good about it, said Kuro. I won't tell you that you should. said Dubois. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. I do have one more question for you, said Dubois after a moment, with a bright shift in tone that attempted to fend off the awkwardness. Do you want to go back to Avalon? Would I be allowed to? I skipped months of class. Haven't I been expelled? Dubois waved away his concerns. Ms. McCutcheon has agreed to make some accommodations given your exceptional circumstances. Marie also missed a lot of class this term, dealing with the court, explaining things to her family, and getting some counseling. And they're still letting her graduate. Are you saying that I'd be allowed to graduate too? Asked Courreau, hearing the implication in Dubois' words, but thinking he must have imagined it. You would need to take some summer schooling, said Dubois. But you're used to that already, and we have someone who has volunteered to teach you. Beatrice Crawley has had her sentence commuted. Her punishment for collaborating with Roche has been reduced from imprisonment down to community service. That was fantastic news. The possibility that Ms. Crawley might have gone back to prison after helping them escape had haunted him. Dubois should have opened with that if he wanted Courreau's cooperation. So I can really just go back? Courreau asked again. No punishment, no prison, nothing? I broke into the royal palace, let Claudius Roche use the regent like a puppet, and nearly got Marie and Arthur killed. Dubois dismissed his concerns. Other people don't see it that way. You're a hero of the summer court. If you're not careful, they might knight you. Courreau shuddered at the thought. The other courts are a little less thrilled with you, though, he continued. I think they just don't want Tirnanog to be able to claim you. They want the guard to keep an eye on you, and for you to stay anchored. It felt like the bottom was falling out of his stomach, along with all the excitement he'd been allowed to build up about returning to Avalon. I don't have it, he mumbled. Really? Said Dubois. That's strange. It isn't in any of the official reports that you managed to take it off. That's supposed to be impossible. Azalea Lamorak did find a bracelet very similar to your anchor hidden inside her armor cuffs when they were given to her, but that couldn't be yours. Dubois produced the silver bracelet from his pocket and passed it over. Courreau could hardly believe the hound would be willing to pretend it had never been taken off. It was an offer almost too generous to be believed, but it was also a cruel bargain. The West Wind had helped rescue Marie just as much, if not more, than Courreau had. She had cared for him and carried him for as long as he could remember. She'd stayed by his side even when the anchor had built an insurmountable barrier between them. She came to visit him every day out in the Blandlands, even though she was much weaker out here. She rustled through his hair now as he sat staring at the silver bracelet, as if in sympathy for the decision he had to make. He'd accepted the anchor when he hadn't had a choice in the matter, and before he knew of the true consequences. Doing so again, when he was free to refuse, seemed like the deepest betrayal. Do you know why nobody recognized Roche? Asked Dubois, ignoring the turmoil he'd just inflicted on Courreau. He never did anything to make people suspicious. He just kept doing jobs of the regent and the warden perfectly. He wasn't greedy or flashy. He just took over their lives and behaved like everyone expected him to. As if the circlets he was wearing were the real ones. While he spoke, Courreau rolled the bracelet around in his hands, sliding his finger over the runes, fighting the equal urges to put it on and throw it out the window. Then he noticed something very odd. There was a mistake in the engravings. He had spent so much time studying the bracelet over the year that it jumped out to him. Not only was there a mistake, it was one he remembered. This was a forgery he had made, the one he had given to Dubois for Solstice. He looked up at the hound, who made no outward signs of recognizing the error. Courreau quickly slid the powerless bracelet onto his wrist, afraid that if he dawdled too long, Dubois would change his mind. I'll have to finish out my shift here at least, said Courreau. Of course, said Dubois, but don't take too long. The graduation ceremony is in 2 days, and I don't want to miss the boat. My son will be taking his first flight after all.
Thank you for listening to Stealing from Wizards. If you liked our show, please consider rating or reviewing on iTunes. If you want to support this podcast or just can't wait for the next chapter, the full book is available on Amazon, Kobo, and Indigo. Our theme music was written by Camille Saint-Saëns, transcribed by Franz Liszt, performed by Rebecca Verdun, and used with permission. This episode was produced by Jim Tigwell.